Hello folks, welcome to our canal channel Jose. Today we're going to show you, give you an idea how easy it is to replace the spark plugs on your Toyota Tercel. This applies for a 91 to a 94 Toyota Tercel, and we're going to be using NGK spark plugs. These are iridium, and this car requires one per cylinder. And with that, we're going to be showing you during the process what tools we use and how easy it is to replace. And with that, let's get started. So before we start, we want to make sure that our car is cooled down. And then what we're going to remove is this plastic piece so we can access our spark plugs easier. So we're going to have to remove a 10 millimeter bolt, another 10 millimeter bolt, and then there's a third 10 millimeter bolt right here that disconnects this tube from the air box. So we take those three off so we can start getting to the spark plugs. So now that we have our car cooler, and then we have no air box in the way, this is going to be piston 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then if you want to change the spark plugs, what I would recommend is that you do one at a time so you don't lose the sequence. But if you know your car, you can unplug all the wires and change the spark plugs and plug it back on. But always do one at a time so you don't lose a sequence. So we'll start by the farthest one, and we're going to be at 13/16 socket for these spark plugs, so we'll do one at a time. This is the spark plug that we just took out, and as you can see, it's not that bad, but it looks like it's been running rich. And this is the NGK R, and we're gonna be replacing it with the NGK Iridium. This is the Iridium, the one we're gonna be putting in, and this is the one we took out. And they both NGK. So let's put this one on now. Okay folks, one thing about these spark plugs is that you don't want to damage this gap. So if you drop it and this closes, it's gonna be really hard to re-gap it, because these spark plugs, they are really sensitive, and they're iridium. This material is really fine, so you don't want to damage that tip where the electrode is, because that's gonna create the spark. So we don't want to damage the gap. And also another thing, you don't want to force it in. You want to start screwing it by hand a few turns so you don't damage the threads on the head of the car, because that's a big mistake you can make, and then it can cost you a lot of money. You start it a couple turns by hand, and then you can put the socket to tighten it. So we put this one on the cylinder number 1. Be careful not to close that gap, because they already pre-gap. So now we have replaced the number 1 cylinder spark plug, so we're gonna continue on the other ones. And one thing we wanna say is that you do one at a time. And one thing is that when you're tightening in these spark plugs, as you can see, the used one, has this washer that has been crushed, and this one is still thicker than this one. So that tells you when the spark plug is being installed, and that helps for the spark plug not to turn and loosen itself. It's like a Loctite system, so it keeps the spark plug from spinning. So as you can see, so we install the other one now. que acabamos de sacar. So we want to expose that we let one drop, and this is what happened. This spark plug, we let it drop, and look at the gap is smaller than this one. This is still good gap. This is no good. So if you let it drop and then you start losing gap, and then your car, if you install a new spark plug with the gap reduced, that because you let it drop, is you're gonna have a problem, and you're gonna say, well, what can it be, because I put brand new spark plugs. But that's gonna be the problem, because the gap is not the right gap for the ignition. You always want to make sure that you don't drop it, and when you putting it in, be careful not forcing it in as well. So we put the other one in. So when you're taking a spark plug wires off, don't just pull them on the first try. Just try to work it, move it around, and then trying to loosen it, and then you can pull it away, because sometimes the tip inside here gets stuck to the spark plug. That is not gonna let it off, and it's gonna end up, the wire is gonna end up here. So the wire ends up here and it chop itself, then you're gonna have to buy a brand new wire. But we try to work the wires, working before we pull them, so that way we don't end up with a rip wire. So now that we got the wire off, we can pull the spark plug. And then we're gonna leave the link below how to fix a spark plug wire when it rips from the inside here, so you don't have to buy another spark plug wire. Another thing is that when you're putting the spark plug wires back on, when you put it over the spark plug and you slide the boot over it, and then you want to push in, and then want to hear the click that the metal piece of the spark plug wire has sat on the spark plug. So right inside there's a spark plug wire what hooks into the spark plug piece. So it slides right in there, and then the boot hugs the ceramic, but you want to hear the click that locks into the metal piece of the spark plug, not just the boot holding the spark plug. You want to feel that click. So now that we are finished, we make sure that the wires are installed in the order that they need to be, and that they're all in there, they're not loose, and they're not coming off. So with that, we know that the spark plugs are in there as well. So, and now what we can do is we pick up our spark plugs, and we can save these for emergency purpose, just in case we ever need a spark plug. We just clean them. Now that we have replaced the spark plugs and everything's back on, we turn on the car, verify that everything's working properly before we start assuming that it could be good, because sometimes if we can put a spark plug wire backwards, and then we might have to troubleshoot it. So we start the car and see what happens. And as you can see, folks, you can do this spark plug replacement at home, easy, and it's economical, so you don't have to take it to a shop and spend a lot of money on this replacement. So these are the spark plugs we use, or we just install. Here's the part number, and this box comes with 4, and that's what the engine took. And these spark plugs are about $9 per spark plug, so we got about $40 spent on spark plugs on our little Tercel. And well, folks, this was an idea how to replace the spark plugs on your 91 to 94 Toyota Tercel. This applies for the older models as well because the head is the same or is about the same. And then one thing that we want to say is that when you're doing this replacement, you want to turn on your car, let it just warm up a little bit so the metals are more flexible, so it's not cold, and then you're going to have trouble and you might strip the threads on the head. And if when you're putting it back on the spark plug, you want to make sure you give a couple threads by hand, because if you put the tools and it doesn't sit right and it starts overlapping on the threads, then you're gonna damage the threads. And then once you get a couple threads in, then you can start adding your tools. Don't add any impact guns or any stuff that has too much power, because you're gonna damage those threads or the head. So it's pretty simple, basic stuff, and hopefully there was info that you can use on your next spark plug replacement. For those folks who are watching our video, haven't subscribed to our channel, please subscribe. If you like our video, give us thumbs up, share it, and we'll see you soon with more videos here on El Canal El Chano Jose.